She faced criticism at her sister-in-law's engagement, so I stood up for her. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. Maybe in your family it's acceptable to marry beneath you. Patricia says, raising her champagne flute like she's making a toast instead of a threat. The laughter around the dining table is tight, brittle, full of teeth. Maya's fingers freeze around her glass, the diamond on her hand catching the chandelier light as if it's just been put on trial. Nobody looks at her directly, but everyone sees her, the way you notice a stain on a white tablecloth and pretend not to. I'm Anna, the groom's younger sister, and tonight I'm supposed to be smiling for photos at my brother Daniel's engagement party. Instead, I'm counting how many times my future sister-in-law has been insulted in the last 20 minutes. 7. If you include the joke about her dress being brave for someone with her hips. Around us, the room is white roses, linen napkins, and polished silver. The caterers glide in and out like ghosts. A pianist in the corner plays something soft that doesn't quite cover the sound of Patricia's voice. She sits at the head of the table like a queen in a navy silk dress, diamonds flashing every time she gestures toward Maya as if she bought the right to judge. Maya swallows, shoulders hitching almost invisibly. I didn't realize there was a height requirement for basic human respect, she says softly. Patricia's red lips curl. Oh honey, don't be dramatic. We're just being honest. In this family, we take compatibility seriously. The word "we" hangs in the air like a closed door. I feel every eye on me for half a second, wondering if I'll nod along, if I'll keep the peace like I always do. Mom is gone now, and Patricia's money keeps this house, this image, this version of our family stitched together. She helped me cover my grad school loans and gave me a job connection when I was desperate. Across the table, Maya's eyes flick toward me, a quick, desperate question she doesn't dare ask out loud. Her knuckles are white around the stem of her glass. I know that look. It's the same one I wore years ago when Patricia first decided I was a project to be improved. I stare down into my untouched drink and feel my throat burn as Patricia leans in for her final blow of the night. I still had no idea how far that final blow would go. Before tonight, I liked to believe Patricia's cruelty was weather, not climate. Little storms that blew through and then cleared, leaving us all pretending the sky had always been blue. I met her properly 5 years ago, when Daniel first brought Maya home for Thanksgiving, long before the engagement ring and the white roses and the event planner. Back then, the house already looked like a lifestyle magazine. Neutral tones, curated art, bowls of lemons that no one ever ate. Maya showed up in a second-hand coat with a missing button and a pumpkin pie she'd baked herself because she didn't want to come empty-handed. Patricia opened the door, air kissing her cheeks while her eyes ran over the coat like a scanner. So, you're the social worker, Patricia said, the words tilted like a question and an accusation at once. Maya smiled. Yeah, I work at a community center on the west side. How noble, Patricia replied, stretching the word like gum. Daniel has always been drawn to projects. Daniel laughed too loudly and changed the subject. Later, when I was loading the dishwasher, Patricia stood next to me arranging the good china like she was defusing a bomb. She seemed sweet, I offered. Patricia's lipstick barely moved. Sweet doesn't pay for a mortgage in this neighborhood, Anna. At the time, I shrugged it off as garden-variety snobbery. I was still new to my own career, still grateful for Patricia's help getting my foot in the door at the marketing firm she had connections with. It was easier to ignore the way she graded everyone in her life like a report card, red pen always in hand. But a month ago, I watched her circle Maya in a different way, less like an editor, more like a predator, after a comment slipped out at brunch. Patricia stirred her coffee, looked Maya dead in the eye, and said, "Some people climb. Some people marry up and hope no one notices the gap." Maya laughed, but her hand shook so much the teaspoon clinked against the cup. That was the first time I saw real fear in her eyes when she looked at my family. I should have realized then that Patricia was sharpening a knife. When Daniel and Maya announced the engagement, Patricia didn't scream or throw a fit. She smiled for the photos, posted them with a caption about welcoming a new daughter, and tagged every designer involved in the ring and the restaurant. The group chat she created the same night, Engagement Dream Team, was where the mask started to slip. Patricia dictated dress codes, menu options, and a guest list that mysteriously excluded most of Maya's family. The venue only seats so many, she typed, even though I knew the ballroom could hold twice that number. When Maya suggested inviting her cousins from Queens, Patricia sent a single message. We're aiming for a certain atmosphere, dear. Maya screenshotted it to me separately. Am I crazy? She asked. Or is that code for something? I typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on. She just wants everything perfect. Don't take it personally. It felt like betrayal even as I hit send. The micro-corrections kept coming. Maybe choose a dress that's more classic. Tattoos will date the photos. We can cover your student loans on the registry so it looks nicer. Are you sure you want your father to give a speech? Considering everything? Considering what? Maya asked out loud at my apartment one night, scrolling through Patricia's messages with a glass of cheap wine in hand. I held out the bottle for a refill. I think everything means that he's a mechanic and swears a lot. She huffed a laugh, then pressed her face into my throw pillow. I feel like I'm auditioning for a role I already got. On my phone, the main family thread pinged with side commentary, Patricia worrying about optics, and Aunt asking if Maya would tone down her politics on social media before the party. Nobody said the words class or background or wrong side of the city, but they pulsed under every sentence. You did get it, I said. Daniel chose you. Did he? She whispered. Because lately it feels like his mom did. That was the first time I wondered what Daniel had promised. The week of the engagement party, the city felt like it was holding its breath. The weather app promised clear skies, perfect for photos, according to Patricia's last all-caps text, and the caterer confirmed the final head count while I was on my lunch break. Maya sent me a picture of her dress hanging from the back of her bedroom door, the fabric carefully steamed, a post-it on the hanger that read, "Don't spill coffee, idiot." 2 days before the party, Daniel called me late, his voice low and frayed around the edges. Hey, he said, we might need you to help keep things calm on Saturday. Define calm. I replied, already pacing the length of my tiny living room, bare feet cold against the wood floor. He hesitated. Mom thinks there should be a family conversation with Maya, just to clear the air before the wedding planning really starts. My stomach dropped. Daniel, what does that even mean? It's not an ambush, he insisted quickly. She just has concerns, and you know how she is. If you're there, maybe you can translate? Make sure nobody takes it the wrong way. Does Maya know about this? A long pause. Not exactly. I don't want her stressing out before the party. She's going to be thrilled when she realizes she's walking into a performance review. I snapped. Anna, please, he said, and there it was. The same tone he used when we were kids, and he wanted me to cover for him. If this blows up, Mom will threaten to pull the venue, the money, everything. I just need tonight to go smoothly. You know how much this means to us. I looked at the stack of unpaid bills on my kitchen table, the framed photo of Mom on the wall, the text from Patricia earlier that day praising me as her rock. The web was already spun. All I had to do was lie still. Let me guess, I said finally. You want me to sit there and smile while she dissects Maya's life? I want you to keep the peace, he whispered. You're good at that. He wasn't wrong, but for the first time, I wondered what that talent had cost me. I didn't realize the real cost would come due that night. Patricia's house glowed like a showroom when I pulled up that evening. Fairy lights wrapped every tree in the front yard. Valet attendants in black vests opened car doors before guests had fully stopped. Inside, the air smelled like peonies and truffle oil, the kind of scent that whispers, you are lucky just to be invited. Maya arrived a few minutes after me, stepping out of an Uber because she refused to waste money on renting a car for one night. Her dress was a deep emerald green that made her skin look warm and her eyes almost golden. She'd twisted her hair up, leaving a few curls loose, and the small tattoo behind her ear, 3 tiny waves, peeked out when she turned her head. You look ridiculous, I said, hugging her. Daniel's going to faint. She laughed, but there was a tightness around her mouth. If he passes out, can we just leave him and elope? We walked in together, into a sea of navy suits and cocktail dresses that all somehow cost more than my monthly rent. Patricia swept over like a ship changing course, kissed Maya on both cheeks, and smiled so hard her cheekbones might have cracked. You look lovely, she said, eyes flicking down to the tattoo, then to Maya's sensible heels. Very you. Thank you, Maya replied, standing a little straighter. Daniel appeared behind Patricia, already slightly flushed, tie crooked. He kissed Maya, hugged me, and pulled us toward the main room where the photographer was waiting. As we posed, Patricia angled herself so that Maya's tattoo was hidden behind Daniel's head. The first comments came quickly, like testing the water. An aunt murmured, "Oh, you're brave, wearing green. It photographs interestingly." A cousin asked loudly if Maya's parents had managed to come up from the bad side of town. Someone joked about social workers and their savior complexes. Maya laughed along at first, fingers tightening around Daniel's arm. I watched her shoulders slowly fold inward as the room circled her, smiling, smiling, smiling. I kept waiting for Daniel to notice she was slowly disappearing inside herself. It didn't take long for Maya to disappear physically too. Right after the appetizers, tiny toasts with things I couldn't pronounce. A comment about her fork grip set off another ripple of laughter. Her smile froze. Then she mumbled something about needing the restroom and slipped away down the hallway. I hesitated for maybe 30 seconds before following. Old habits. Be the fixer, the smoother, the translator. The hallway felt blessedly quiet compared to the dining room. The music muffled by thick walls and expensive art. I found Maya in the powder room, standing at the marble sink with her hands braced on either side, breathing like she'd just run a race. "In case you're wondering," she said to my reflection in the mirror, "I do know how to hold a fork." Her mascara had smudged faintly under one eye. She swiped at it with a corner of toilet paper that immediately left little white flakes on her cheek. I grabbed a tissue from the box and handed it to her. "They're being awful," I said. It felt like the bare minimum and also like treason. Maya gave a small, humorless laugh. "It's fine. I grew up with relatives who thought my mom ruined her life marrying my dad. I'm used to people's expectations being louder than their congratulations." She took a shaky breath. "It's just, I thought this would be different. Daniel promised his mom was coming around. She should be grateful he found someone who actually likes him," I said, trying to lighten the mood. It only half worked. Maya looked at herself in the mirror, at the dress she'd saved months for, the necklace her father had bought on layaway. "Can I tell you something without you thinking less of me?" "Of course." "If this goes badly tonight," she whispered, "I don't know if I can go through with marrying into this." Something in my chest lurched at the seriousness in her voice. This wasn't just nerves. It was a line in the sand, drawn with shaking hands, but real, all the same. I didn't know her warning would become the choice in my hands. When we came back to the dining room, the first course had been cleared and the champagne flutes had been topped off again. Patricia stood at the head of the table, tapping her glass with a fork. The room quieted with practiced obedience. "I just want to say a few words," she began, eyes shining with rehearsed emotion. "Tonight is about family, about standards, about making sure the people we love are truly cherished." She gestured for Maya to sit beside her, separating her from Daniel with a breezy, "I'm stealing the bride-to-be for a moment." Daniel hesitated, then took the chair on Patricia's other side. I ended up across from them, close enough to hear every breath. At first, it sounded like a toast. Patricia talked about raising Daniel alone after his father left, about sacrifice and protecting him from the harshness of the world. People nodded along, some dabbed at their eyes. "And now," she said, placing a manicured hand on Maya's arm, "we are welcoming someone very different into our circle. Someone from a background that is not what we're used to." The shift was almost audible. Forks paused. Conversations died mid-sentence. Maya blinked slowly. "I mean that in the best way." Patricia continued, voice dripping honey. "Maya has such a big heart. She works with, what is it, darling? Troubled youth?" "Teenagers," Maya said quietly. "Mostly from low-income families." Yes, Patricia said. "Such admirable work. Of course, it does make us wonder how the values from that environment will mesh with ours." A nervous laugh skittered around the table. "We're just being honest," an aunt chimed in. "This family has certain expectations." Patricia tilted her head, studying Maya like a painting. "We just want to be sure you understand what will be required of you, stepping into our world." Maya's face went perfectly still, the kind of stillness that comes right before either tears or fire. I felt something in me crack as everyone waited for her apology. The attack shifted from subtle to surgical after dinner. People began drifting toward the bar and dessert tables, clusters forming like little storm cells. I escaped to the side for a moment, pretending to check my phone, when Uncle Rob materialized beside me with his eternal glass of club soda. He watched Patricia pull Maya aside toward the library, hand on her elbow, smile fixed. "She's really going to do it, huh?" he muttered. "Do what?" I asked. "Run the audit," he said. She scheduled this like a board meeting the day Daniel mentioned engagement. My throat tightened. An audit of what exactly? Maya's soul? Rob snorted, then sighed. Of her bank account, her parents, her last name, her medical history. You know how your stepmother is. She thinks marriage is a merger, not a relationship. She says it's about protecting Daniel. I replied weakly. Sure, he said. And the family trust. And her control over both. He took a slow sip, eyes on Patricia. She told me last month she refuses to let another woman walk in here with nothing and walk out with half. I frowned. Another woman? He glanced at me. Your father's divorce. Patricia still thinks your mother robbed them, even though they had almost nothing then. It clicked unpleasantly. Patricia didn't just see Maya as from the wrong side of town. She saw her as a living reminder that love could choose poor and still be real, that security and status weren't guarantees. So this is about money, I said. And jealousy. And fear, Rob added. Your mother left. Patricia is terrified of losing assets and control. In the library doorway, I saw Maya sit on the edge of a leather chair while Patricia loomed over her, hands steepled. The sight made my skin crawl. It looked less like a conversation and more like an interrogation waiting to start. I should go in there, I murmured. Rob shrugged. Depends. Do you want to be a witness or a shield? The words landed with a weight I didn't want. Being a witness meant doing what I'd always done, watching, rationalizing, venting later. Being a shield meant stepping between Patricia and her target, knowing that shields always get dented first. I hadn't yet decided which I was willing to be tonight. By the time I worked up the nerve to move, the family talk had migrated back to the dining room under the guise of dessert. Patricia called it a little circle of trust and ordered the staff to give us privacy. The rest of the guests were politely herded toward the bar and terrace, leaving a tight knot of relatives around the long table. Maya sat near the middle, posture straight, but eyes wary. Daniel hovered at her side, fingers drumming against his thigh. Patricia stood at the head again, hands clasped like a benevolent therapist. First, she said, I want to say how happy we are to welcome you, Maya. You've brought a fresh energy into Daniel's life. The pause after fresh was a chasm. But, she continued, this family has worked very hard to build what we have. There are certain standards we expect to maintain. She ticked them off like agenda items. Financial responsibility, appropriate social media presence, stability in family background, no drama or unresolved issues. She mentioned Maya's parents' divorce, her father's blue-collar job, the neighborhood she'd grown up in. We're just concerned, an aunt added. People from that environment sometimes bring complications. Maya's hands were folded in her lap, knuckles bloodless. My father works 6 days a week, she said quietly. He's the hardest working person I know. Patricia smiled maternally. No one is questioning his effort, dear. We just worry about habits. Expectations. We can't have Daniel pulled down. I watched Daniel flinch at the phrase, but he didn't speak. His eyes flicked to me for a second, plea and warning tangled together. And finally, Patricia said, voice softening into faux vulnerability, we need to be sure that if, God forbid, things don't work out, our family is protected. A prenup is non-negotiable. So is limiting access to certain accounts and properties. She slid a slim folder across the table toward Maya, its white cover glowing under the chandelier like a scalpel laid out on a tray. In that moment, the choice between silence and action stopped feeling theoretical. I stared at the folder like it might start bleeding. Maya didn't touch it. Her eyes flicked from the papers to Patricia's face, then to Daniel's, searching for something, support, outrage, a clue that this was a bad joke. Is this really happening? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. It's standard, Patricia said brightly. Everyone in our position does it. If you have nothing to hide, there's nothing to worry about. I felt my pulse in my ears. This wasn't about legal documents. It was a public weighing of worth. Patricia wasn't just asking for a signature. She was demanding a confession that Maya was lucky to be here, that she needed rules to keep her from breaking the good china. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. I saw my own history layered over Maya's. Patricia questioning my college major, my first job, my rent choices. "We're just trying to help you make smart decisions," she'd said back then. I'd believed her, or at least pretended to. Across the table, Uncle Rob shifted in his seat. He caught my eye and gave the slightest shake of his head, then a look that said, "I see this too." His hand rested on the table, palm up, like an offer. "Daniel," Maya finally asked, "is this what you want?" He swallowed hard. "It's what will make Mom comfortable," he said. "I just want everyone to get along." Something cold settled in my stomach. I realized that if I stayed quiet, Maya would be standing in this room completely alone. Everyone else either wanted her to comply or wanted not to know better. "Anna," Patricia said lightly, sensing the shift, "you understand how important it is to protect family assets, don't you?" Every favor she'd ever done me flashed through my mind like a slideshow. The tuition check, the job referral, the spare room when my last lease fell through. I could feel the invisible ledger she kept on all of us, waiting for me to stay in my lane. I pushed my chair back, the scrape of wood on tiles sounding louder than the music from the other room. For the first time in years, I chose not to stay seated. Every head turned as I stood. It was like being back in grade school, the moment before you either answer the teacher correctly or humiliate yourself in front of the whole class. My heart hammered against my ribs so loudly I was sure the crystal would rattle. "Can I say something?" I asked, even though I was already talking. Patricia's smile tightened. "Of course, dear. This affects you too." "Great," I said, "because I have some concerns of my own." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Rob's mouth twitched like he was trying not to smile. Maya looked at me as if I'd just grabbed her hand while she was falling. "I keep hearing standards and our world and protecting the family," I said. "But all I see is a bunch of people ganging up on one woman who walked in here with nothing but love for my brother and her own backbone." "Anna," Patricia said warningly, "this is not an attack. We're having an honest discussion." "Funny," I replied, because honesty would sound more like, "We're scared Maya won't decorate her life with the same price tags we do, so we're trying to control her until she fits the picture." An audible gasp traveled down the table. One aunt shook her head. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" I asked. "You're dissecting her family background while half of you have divorces, affairs, and secret credit cards you hope no one finds on the statement." Color rose in Patricia's cheeks. "That is enough." "No," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "What's enough is implying that Maya's father is somehow less than because he fixes cars instead of managing a hedge fund. What's enough is acting like her work with kids from tough neighborhoods is a stain instead of the only decent thing most of us could put on a resume." Daniel finally spoke, voice cracking. "Anna, please, this isn't helping." "It's helping me," Maya whispered, so softly I barely heard it over the ringing in my ears. Patricia straightened, eyes hard. "If you're so determined to undermine this family, Anna, perhaps you should reconsider how much you rely on it." The threat was out now, naked and ugly, hanging in the air between us like smoke. For the first time, her threat didn't make me want to sit down. Silence followed my words, thick and electric. Somewhere in the other room, a waiter dropped a tray and a burst of laughter rose from the guests who had no idea a war was being declared in here. Our little circle of trust had become a firing squad facing the wrong direction. "I rely on this family," I repeated, pulse pounding. "You mean on you? On your money? On your approval?" Patricia's eyes flashed. "If you're going to twist my generosity into some kind of weapon, you already did that," I said. "You wrote checks with strings attached, and now you're upset I noticed the strings." "Anna," Daniel said sharply, "enough. This is about me and Maya, not your issues." "Exactly," Patricia cut in. "And right now, your fiancé is refusing to even look at our very reasonable protections." All eyes swung back to Maya. She sat very still, staring at the folder, then slowly pushed it back across the table with 2 fingers. "I'm not refusing," she said. "I'm saying I won't be bullied into signing anything at my own engagement party." Patricia's mouth fell open. "Bullied? Maya, we are simply trying to make sure you understand your place in." "In what?" Maya asked, suddenly louder. "In your hierarchy? On your balance sheet?" The room fractured. One cousin stood up abruptly, muttering that this was too much drama. An aunt started crying about families falling apart these days. Someone near the end of the table actually clapped once before realizing literally no one else was joining in. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking between his mother and his fiancée like they were dueling cliffs, and he was a terrified rope bridge. "I need a minute," he said, backing away from the table. "Daniel," Patricia barked, "do not walk away from this conversation." But he did, leaving a Daniel-shaped silence behind that somehow made everything louder. Maya looked at me, eyes bright and wet. "Thank you," she mouthed. I'd wanted to help her. Instead, I'd just lit the fuse neither of us could now put out. I didn't yet understand how long the explosion would echo afterward. The next morning, my phone looked like it had survived a natural disaster. 43 missed messages in the family chat, 12 from Daniel, 6 from Patricia, 3 from unknown numbers that turned out to be cousins I barely knew demanding to know what had possessed me. Patricia's first text was a screenshot of an unsent draft, a lengthy message she'd clearly written and deleted, full of words like ungrateful and poisonous. The actual message she sent was shorter. "We need to talk about last night. Call me." I didn't. Instead, I scrolled through the chat. One aunt said I'd embarrassed the family in front of important guests. Another said Maya had manipulated me with her sob story. Someone claimed Patricia was only trying to ensure Maya didn't trap Daniel for money, which would have been funny if it weren't so backward. Then, buried in the middle, a quiet message from Uncle Rob. "For what it's worth, Anna said what a lot of us think." Daniel's text swung wildly. "Why would you ambush Mom like that?" Followed by, "She was horrible to Maya." "I know." Followed by, "I'm trying to keep everyone calm. Please don't make this harder." He ended with, "Maya is really shaken up. She's talking about postponing the wedding. I don't know what to do." For a full day, I answered no one. I went to work, sat through meetings where people argued about color palettes, and watched my own reflection in the conference room glass look like someone else's older, more tired sister. That night, Maya called. Her voice was hoarse from crying, but steady. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" I asked, genuinely confused. "For dragging you into this," she replied. "Patricia already called my dad and implied I'm a gold digger. Half her siblings have messaged me advice about apologizing. If you want to back away, I get it." There it was again, the choice. Protect my comfort or stand next to the person everyone else was trying to shove out of the picture. I didn't know my answer would help decide whether the wedding happened. In the end, the wedding didn't get postponed, but it didn't happen the way Patricia planned either. After a week of icy texts and weaponized silence, Daniel showed up at my apartment looking like he hadn't slept. "Maya wants to elope," he said, dropping onto my couch. "She says she can't promise to stand in front of our families and pretend everything's fine." "And what do you want?" I asked. He stared at his hands. "I want to marry her. I also don't want to lose my mother. She's complicated, but she's still my mom. She's also the reason your fiancé is considering running for the state line," I said. We talked for hours. I told him, gently but clearly, that neutrality was a choice too, and one that always favored the person with the most power. Rob's words, Patricia's audit, the way Maya had said, "I don't know if I can marry into this," in my bathroom, it all poured out. 2 days later, Daniel called a meeting without Patricia. He sat down with Maya and her parents at a diner on the west side and told them he was choosing her. The prenup would be negotiated fairly with both their lawyers, not shoved across a table like an ultimatum. The engagement party photos would not be used for the wedding website. Patricia would be welcome at the ceremony only if she apologized and agreed to treat Maya's family as equals. She did not apologize. The wedding went ahead anyway, smaller and less glossy than Patricia's vision board, but real in a way her parties never were. We booked a small garden venue behind a community arts center, served food from Maya's favorite Dominican restaurant, and let kids run around instead of shooing them away from the furniture. Patricia didn't attend. She sent a monogrammed crystal vase that Maya donated to the thrift store a week later. I walked down the aisle as Daniel's best person, holding his ring and my own shaken faith in family at the same time. Later, when we posed for photos in front of a mural instead of a mansion, I realized we'd built something Patricia could never host in her house, a celebration that didn't require anyone to shrink to fit. I still had one more relationship to redefine before any of it felt stable. That last relationship, of course, was with Patricia. Or maybe more accurately, with the version of myself who had spent years trying to earn her approval like a quarterly bonus. For weeks after the wedding, she sent me alternating messages, icy silence, then guilt-laced paragraphs about family loyalty and airing dirty laundry. I replied once, with a carefully written boundary. "I'm grateful for the help you gave me," I wrote. "But generosity isn't a leash. I won't stand quietly by while you humiliate people I love. When you're ready to treat Maya and her family with respect, my door is open. Until then, I need space." She never answered directly. Instead, she told relatives I'd been brainwashed by Maya, that I was throwing away years of support. Some believed her, some didn't. The circle around me got smaller, but it also got kinder. These days, Sunday dinners are at Maya and Daniel's tiny apartment, where the chairs don't match and the plates are chipped, but no one comments on fork grips. Her dad brings empanadas. My coworker who grew up in foster care brings his boyfriend. Uncle Rob brings his stories and his club soda. We argue about politics at the table and then wash dishes together afterward, still speaking. Sometimes I catch Maya watching me when I shut down a joke that goes too far or redirect a conversation that starts to veer into judgment. There's gratitude in her eyes, but also something else. Permission, maybe, to take up her own space without apologizing for it. She stood up for herself that night, too, in ways I didn't fully appreciate until later. If you've ever sat in a room and watched someone be picked apart under the banner of just being honest, you know that the hardest part isn't speaking up. It's deciding you're willing to live with the version of yourself who didn't. I'm not saying everyone should blow up an engagement party. Sometimes the safest thing you can do is quietly pull someone aside and let them know they're not crazy. But if you ever find yourself watching someone be measured and found wanting, remember that silence is also a sentence, and it rarely lands on the person who deserves it most. So ask yourself which version of you will be easier to forgive.